Hello everyone and welcome back to the next episode of the Road to the Master series. This is the episode number 62 in which I will cover rounds number 2 and 3 from the Czech Republic Team Championship that happened during the day number 2 of the tournament. So without further ado, let's jump straight into them. In round number 2 I got paired against a player that was just above 2000 rating, so I was kind of okay with it because I was expecting someone under this rating, to be honest, but this was the strongest player of the team that we were facing, so I was let's say lucky in that sense. Unlucky in a sense that, well, he was the best player of the team and had white pieces, so if I want to get to the FIDE Master title I need to break through such opponents. Did that happen? Let's see. My opponent opted for knight f3, against which, as you may have remembered from the previous episodes, I've played plenty of choices and I chose a new one in here, so maybe like sixth one within last month, and it was d6. I got inspired by my opponent from the round number 1, so if you haven't seen yesterday's video, please watch it. I wanted to try to go into some King's Indian setups in which I was trying to get some wins against the players of that rating in the Alicante tournament, if you remember that. And after d6, d4 happens, so we get knight f6, c4, g6, and we indeed get the King's Indian on the board. And the only thing I was worried at this point was the d5 move, because in the plenty of games I've played, I took on d4 straight away. In here, this is the very last moment for my opponent to go away from that variation, because if, for example, castle happened or bishop e3, any other move, most likely I would just simply take. And I was like praying, okay, don't play d5, don't play d5. And my opponent did just that. Why is it problematic for me? First of all, I don't know much theory. All I have in mind were just, some ideas, some moves, but not anything specific. On top of that, position gets much more closed, and yeah, in that scenario, when you are playing strategically not the greatest opening as King's Indian defense is, and you don't know the ideas, and the position is closed, and you want to win as black, well, it's a bad combination overall. From what I remembered, thankfully, was the move a5, trying to get at least some space on the queen side, and then allow myself to jump with the knight to either from either d7 to c5 or a6 to c5. At that point my opponent played bishop g5. I was expecting that after my h6 he would go back to e3, but to my surprise he played to h4, and to my bigger surprise after the game I checked, this is actually the main move in here. So okay, this is it. I continued with knight a6, knight c5 continuation. However, it was not the most precise one. Apparently at this point I kind of remembered it okay, but it was just too bizarre to play over the board. The move like queen e8 makes the most sense, because apparently it's not my job, it's not my goal to play with the knight to c5, attack this pawn, and maybe continue something on the queen side with like a4 move. My goal should be rather to play a move like this, go away from the pin, then move the knight away, even to like h7 sometimes, and then try to push forward with f5 move. Yes, I mean the eval bar now dropped because of some c5 possibilities, so maybe knight a6 might have been included anyway in the process, but the point is I should rather go for the f5 move, which felt like I should do it, but I was just unable to find specific, let's say, continuation for it. That's why I chose knight a6, knight c5, which felt more natural, let's say. And at this point I was kind of lost, but still I felt, okay, maybe this is the move to go. But what to do after simple knight b5 hitting the pawn? So maybe I will start with bishop d7. Yes, my opponent replied with b3, therefore stopping my a4 possibility. So I was stopped there, and I believe this is the critical moment in which I should have, let's say, considered queen e8 much more, so that, knight b5 is not a possibility, a4, well, maybe not, but still queen looks in that direction. But most importantly, I go away from the pin, allow my knight to jump away, and prepare f5. This should be the way to go, but I just did not feel it, and I've played completely different way. After the game, as I've said, since I did not know the variation, I checked the variation, and this is the moment in which crazy line occurs. Like, stay with me, guys. I can take on e4 apparently, give my queen away, get a knight for it with a fork, therefore with a tempo. My opponent have to go to e1 so that he protects the bishop. And now I just simply take the bishop on d8, and my opponent have plenty of choices, I guess, but top engine move is knight b1, funnily enough. To make my knight choose which piece do I want to exchange, I would perhaps go for the bishop. So knight e2, queen e2, e4, opening up my bishop. And the funniest line ever, after knight a3, with the hopes of then later on playing there perhaps, I don't even take on a1. This is not the best line. I just ignore it. I just play f5 and say, okay, I have two bishops and a pawn for the queen. I'm happy. So when I saw this, I was like, wow, so I was supposed to know all of this? I mean, no chance, right? But now that I know it, maybe in the future I will try this line out, even though it seems kind of crazy. And nevertheless, going back to this point, as I've said, I did not play a knight takes e4 or queen e8. I chose g5, trying to get rid of this pin in that way. And then when the pin was settled, let's say when the bishop went away to g3, I chose c6 line, trying to undermine the center a little bit and anyway go for some queenside play. But as I've said from the beginning, this was not the way to go. I just couldn't figure out a better way, and strategically I was playing worse and worse and getting myself into worse and worse position. My opponent replied with natural f3, solidifying the pawn finally and making the route for the bishop. I therefore took on d5, took and played b5. Why? Well, am I hanging the pawn? Not really, because if my opponent accepts it, I have queen b6, protecting the pawn, attacking the knight, and on top of that, thanks to this f3 move that happened, I have some discoveries with knight takes e4 check. So I would be happy with that scenario, therefore the knight cannot take. With the bishop, very same thing happens. I would just change the move order and knight e4 is incoming. So for those reasons my opponent did not take on b5, he played bishop f2. And this is the problem, guys, that opponent's pieces are much better prepared for the queenside action than mine. This knight has no route to queenside straight away. This bishop will be locked forever, so I'm playing on the side of the board that I am worse at. So this is never a good strategy, but I wanted to make something happen, you know, to win the game and all that. So this is the problem and scenario that might occur when you want to win every single game against every single lower rated opponent when you are chasing some rating goals. So this is the trap I fell into. I wanted to win the game anyway, and I wanted to do it dynamically, let's say, and I just got myself into trouble. From what I understand, at this point I should have went with some knight h5, knight f4, calm possibility, and I saw that during the game I was just unable to see any chance for me to win this position. This bishop is closed, this bishop has nowhere to go, the position is closed, the knights are lacking such ones, so it's an 100% draw in my eyes. So I wanted to spice things up, and strategically I went into worse position. Why? Why do I say this? Because this pawn is hit with the bishop on f2, those tricks with queen b6 no longer work, and if so, I am struggling with defense of this pawn. If I play rook b8, my opponent can play a4, undermine this pawn. If I choose to play like this, he can play knight b5. This knight is just simply amazing. If I take, he can take first here, and then like look at my pawns. Those are just terrible, and all of the white squares are the outposts for the knights. They are attacking everything everywhere. It's not a good position. Therefore, instead of doing that, I have to push the pawn forward. Knight b5 is played anyway, queen b8 protecting here, attacking here, a4 solidifying the knight. I have to take en passant, and after knight a3, what's the problem? I have no real target here. My opponent have one or potential two great outposts for the knight, from which my d6 pawn is hit, my a5 pawn is hit, so I have more and more problems. So I need to really place all of my pieces onto the queen side. I started with rook c1, knight to c4, queen c7, protecting this pawn, rook a3, protecting this one, setting up the double stack on a5. I played rook to b8 now, queen a1, and all of a sudden I am on the verge of losing the a pawn. I have no real good way to give it like away for any kind of counterplay. but I played bishop b5, trying to at least pin the knight so that it cannot take the a5 pawn yet. My opponent replied with rook c1, overprotecting the knight, creating some problems along the c file. So at this point I felt like I have to take, and after rook takes I played queen to d8, going away from the pin. I took on c4, therefore there is no pressure there. I maintained the defense, so I felt like okay, I might be surviving at the cost of, well, the knight can be taken, pawn takes, rook takes, but now I have bishop f8, so that's the trick that all my idea was relying on. But at this point, rook to a4 might happen, so the triple stack is there to attack my pawn, and I'm losing the pawn. My pawn structure is terrible, so what I am really aiming for? I was aiming for c4 move, so I'm playing with a pawn onto the square that is attacked 4 times just to open up this bishop. So if my opponent takes, like, I don't know which way, let's say with the knight, I have bishop f8 with the idea that rook goes down, I have check, king goes away, I have this. So my bishop, instead of being there, it's on d4, it's active and all that. So maybe based on the activity, I would be able to get something. Obviously, don't look at the eval bar. I'm saying more of the idea than variation, because for example, in this variation, this pawn is hanging. So maybe taking it would be more beneficial. But the point is, I wanted to sacrifice not 1, but 2 pawns for the activity to just not, be pressurized so much. To my surprise and big surprise, instead of going for this variation, right, straight away, my opponent chose b4. And I was like, wait a second, what's going on? He is basically exchanging one of my biggest weaknesses for I don't know what. So I just took, he took, I cannot really take on before because rook a8 is incoming, so I decided, okay, let's take there, let's retreat with the knight so that the knight on c5 is solidified, and like, I'm alright all of a sudden. Obviously, I'm still not good. I'm still worse because of the bishop pair, because of the lack of the activity, space and all that, but I'm not losing at least. So this was the improvement. Still, I was unhappy with my position due to the time trouble I was in, due to the fact that the opponent has the bishop pair, and on top of that, due to the fact that I have this terrible whore on f5. 1, 2, 3 knight jumps, and I'm hit there, terrible stuff. So that's why this g5 move I played in the game was a very bad one. Thankfully, instead of going there, my opponent decided to go from the other side, so knight c4. I just protected the pawn, and now the dance of the queens and all of the pieces has started. I was really in the time trouble now, having less than 5 minutes. So since I don't have much memories from that period, because I was not calculating much, I was just, playing with the time trouble, I will not give you two specific comments. I was just trying to survive. So queen b5, queen a8, queen c6. I decided against, obviously, exchanging queen b8, knight e3, some check, bishop f1, knight f6, with the idea that if opponent's knight goes to f5, I am no longer hit to the knight, so that my knight, the other one, is free to go, and I go to b3, to d2, to checkmate. And my opponent opted for queen b6, though pinning my pieces, queen d1, maintaining the defense but going away from the pin, and now knight e3. Sorry, I went back with the hopes that my opponent will go back, and then perhaps I would just settle for a draw, because I knew my position is strategically terrible. Actually, at this point, I am not strategically terrible. I am tactically lost because of queen d8 possibility, with the hopes of knight takes h6, for example. Thankfully, as I've said, my opponent did not go for it. Knight e2, knight e3, queen b1, queen b4. And now I have queen, I believe, a2, going away from the pin while maintaining the defense. Knight c4, and now I chose kind of risky, but practically I like this move a lot, knight d4. Why is it risky? Well, because my opponent can take, and then I have doubled pawns. Why is it practically interesting? Because my opponent gets rid of the bishop pair, and even if I lose this pawn or the other, my bishop will open up. So maybe it's not that bad in the end, especially since I might have still some hopes for winning the game. So knight d4 I found and I was proud of it, but my opponent did not take the bait. Instead, he just went with queen d2. And At this point, the team situation was like, okay, if I draw, we should be winning the match. So I took the queen happily, and then once again the dance of the pieces starts. So knight d7, bishop a6, knight c5, bishop c8, knight d3, bishop e3, knight f4. So the dance is all the way around, like here, 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 right? And g3, knight e2, the dance continues, knight c3, bishop e7, bishop d2 hitting the knight. I went back, knight e3, bishop d8, bishop b4, and at this point I remember briefly, no, not briefly, I remember vividly that I have played this specific move, the next one, with 1 second on the clock. What are my problems? If I play here, my opponent can try to hit my knight, play here, and then I am kind of in a Zugzwang. My pieces cannot really move. And on top of that, knight f5 might be incoming. So takes, knight f5 hitting there and there. So since the double attack might be there on f5, I decided that I will play king to h7 to protect the pawn. But still I was unsure if it's okay continuation, especially since after bishop d7, bishop b6, I knew that my opponent can take, play knight f6, and if I go like bishop c7 trying to protect the pawn, this knight is amazing, this bishop is amazing, this king is misplaced, this piece and this one is glued to the d6 pawn, and my opponent can simply start play here, 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 and win the game. For that reason, I would perhaps have to play bishop c5, and I was calculating from the distance that after this, because of the fact that I went there and this pawn push, my king is out of the square of the pawn, and I will be losing. Thankfully though, after bishop b6, my opponent did not find that way. He just went for knight c4, after which I happily went back to protect the pawn. And to my even more bigger surprise, he played bishop a5, I took, he took, and thanks to the fact that he exchanged the pieces and he dragged away the knight from this amazing square and so on, I have an easy route with my king to the e7 square. So king g6 here, here, protecting the pawn. I have no more problems, and after knight c4, my opponent offered a draw, which I happily accepted. So guys, I lost a half a point in here, but looking at the game, it was like I won it, to be honest. But my rating drops, and that's the problem. On top of that, the next round was within like an hour or two, so little time for preparation, little time for mental reset. Did I manage to reset my mind? We'll see in a few seconds. So 3, 2, 1, let's go into round number 3. So in the round number 3, I was faced against a 2100 rated player, so thankfully ratings are getting higher and higher, with white pieces at the same time. As I've told you just a few seconds ago, I did not have much time for preparation, so I wanted to play once more knight f3, b3 setup. Once more, my opponent did not reply with a move that I would expect and like, because he chose c5, after which I was not that sure if b3, d6, bishop b2, e5 is the desired outcome for me. So once more, after c5, I went for e4. This time we got ourselves Sicilian defense, and we got ourselves the knight c3 move, because I saw that my opponent is playing some of the Kalashnikov, Sveshnikov Sicilians, and after now e5 I would go for such setup. Quite a calm one, but I wanted to play a calm game after the morning round, but my opponent chose g6, and then I happily transposed into the open Sicilian, open accelerated dragon, which I quite like with both colors, to be honest. I chose the main line, which is bishop e3, bishop c4, bishop b3. At this point, black has three choices, here, here or there. I myself played a5 for quite a long time, then I switched to d6, which is the main line. Then also this rook e8 move is kind of a mysterious one, but very practical. My opponent chose a5, and I was happy at this point because I remembered that I've played a5 myself when I didn't want to learn much theory, and it was not the best variation for black, because after castle a4, I can take the pawn, and usually, you know, grabbing the central pawn in exchange for the a1 or h1 is good for the player, but as of now I have knight b5, and I am taking care of all of those holes in the opponent's camp. So rook a6, I believe, is the move trying to hold on to them, and then c4, not allowing to d5 to be played. And strategically speaking, it's quite hard for black to continue. So I was expecting this line, I was happy for it, but to my surprise, at this point after castling, my opponent played d6. And it was strange, right? Because after these things, I would play f3, let's say, bishop d7, castle, more or less, something like this, or maybe without a castle. But after bishop b3, a5, castle d6, I decided, okay, you know, this diagonal opened up, knight g4 is on the menu, I have to play f3 to solidify the square, the pawn, and now bishop d7. So we are transposing into the main line of d6 here, 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 in which opponent does not really want to play a5, so I'm fine, right? So with such thoughts, I felt, okay, what can I do to stop my opponent from getting a good position? Well, perhaps it's about the b5 move, because if I play, let's say, queen d2, he can take, and play b5. So if I don't play queen d2, but I will play a4, I will stop him from doing that, so I should be better. This was my thinking process, but I'm not sure if you are following up the eval bar. It does not agree with me. Why? Because at this point already, I don't have to solidify this g4 square. I can play knight d to b5, and if I don't do it and I play f3, my opponent should have taken immediately. He didn't do it, so this is my last call to play this move. Why is it important? This is the only move that would guarantee me some advantage out of the opening, because I'm stopping the b5, but most importantly, I'm stopping the exchange, keeping more pieces on the board. So I will have to play there, then a4, and then, you know, simply develop. I am a little bit better. But if I chose a4 and allowed a trade, yes, I am fine since the b5 is not incoming, but at the same time, it's hard for me to break through opponent's position, because he will try to play knight d7, exchange more pieces, queen b6, knight c5 or b5, and this bishop guarantees just enough solidity, because it covers this and this square, so that it's hard for me to fight for the advantage, and I didn't knew that. So only after the game, now I know that knight d to b5, it can be played even here. Knight g4 is of no threat, I can go to f4, g5, d2, everywhere basically. So yeah, I will know how to react, because the way I reacted seemed logical, but chess is a very concrete stuff, concrete game. I did not gain any advantage out of the opening. Apparently we are still in the theory, but I chose the move that was very niche, let's say rook e1. You know, maybe I will play e5, maybe I will play knight d5 trying to take with a pawn, so I felt like this move is a good one. My opponent chose knight d7, after which I took, he took, I gave a check, he went away, I played rook a to d1, so even though my pieces are so more, let's say, active, evaluation is 0.00. This is the beauty, or rather not a beauty from my perspective, of the structures. My opponent played queen b6, expected, after which I've prepared knight d5 from the distance. The idea is that if exchanges happen, I can try to change this pawn structure and get myself a chance to, let's say, have a better endgame. So after bishop takes, I took with a pawn, and now if my opponent took, I would took, and this pawn is somewhat, you know, a weak one. So that's why my opponent delayed the exchange and play rook f to e8 first, so that this pawn is protected. But now I have prepared a very interesting idea that my opponent perhaps missed, looking at his reaction. Bishop c4. This bishop in general is not a good one. If I would stay there, perhaps knight would be even better in this specific structure against my bishop, but thanks to the fact that I can play here and then there and hit the knight, hit the rook, you know, have this bishop more active, I mean, this bishop might be better. What I have missed though is that after this and this move, in plenty of variation, I just felt, okay, I am getting a pawn advantage. Because let's say he plays like this, I have this pinning there. If he plays like this, I have this move. So yes, maybe in here I'm not getting the advantage, but look at my position. I am so happy about it, right? So my opponent is pinned here, there, no pieces can move whatsoever, so I would be happy. And if, for example, moves like this would happen, I can simply take, he goes there, I can maybe drop back the bishop. Yes, my bishop is yet again not that active, but hey, I have the pawn, I am hitting this one, and so on. So all in all, I felt like I should be okay, but I have missed knight f6 idea. Why is it even like a threat to me? Well, because from the distance I was mostly calculating this move as a way to, you know, hit the pawn, protect this one, go away from the pin, but it does no good for black, because I can play there, attack here, protect here. If the rook goes away, I take there. Yes, this pawn is not for grabs, But hey, once more, I have one more pawn, so it's fine. But after knight f6, the difference is that if I now go for bishop b5, rook c8 takes, there is rook c2. If I take here, there is rook b2. If I will not take here, my opponent will also not allow me to take on b7. On top of that, b3 is not really the best move to play. You know, it's leaving the pawn on the right square, and even if rook b8 happens, this rook is so passive. I have the possibility of, you know, hitting there. No, I don't. There is the fork. Even if the fork was not there, let's say play a move like this, here, king g7, and nothing happens. So, because of that, after knight f6, I have spent in here like, I don't know, 50, no, not 50, 40 minutes calculating all the possible moves, like bishop b5, c3, rook d2, king f2, h4, g4, maybe some more, I don't even remember, but plenty of them. In the end, everything got messed up in my head. I was unable to choose the best move and scenario because I have calculated like 10, 15 moves deep into the end game of like bishop against the knight, rook against rook, two against two, whatever. And in the end, I've decided, okay, I cannot really take the pawn on a7 freely. So instead of doing that, I will try to gain some more space on the king side. I knew that it's a double-edged sword because, well, you know, pushing the pawns make them weaker, but I wanted to still push for a win, right? So I decided to play h4. I'm not getting into details, but I felt like after h5, maybe then this bishop b5, rook takes e7 continuation is a little bit better for me because this and that, whatever, I'm not getting into it. My opponent did not play it, he played king f8, solidifying the pawn, which is logical. g4 happened, rook e to c8, rook is free to go, c3, solidifying the pawn, rook c7, protecting the pawn from this way, maybe double stacking on c5, I now chose rook e3, trying to solidify both pawns and maybe allow myself to play b4 in the future, but now my opponent played quite a interesting move, rook c5, trying to hit the pawn and not allowing me to go there or there or there, like whatever, anywhere. And in here I took an aggressive route, let's say risky route, because I played g5, losing this control over this square, losing the control over this square, so I don't really remember why did I play it, to be honest. I believe I wanted to kick away the knight to c7 so that I can hit it once more after knight e5, f4, after this move rook g3. This was my hope and a kind of the variation I was aiming at when playing rook e3 too, but obviously my opponent did not go for it, he just simply played knight h5 with the hope of going to g7 to f5 and hit all of my weak spots. So practically, to be honest, I don't have that many winning chances anymore. I started with king f2. After knight to g7, I would perhaps have to retreat with the rook, but my opponent started with rook d8. I played bishop f1, trying to reroute the bishop, maybe hit f4, f5, but my opponent now played knight to g7, threatening with this, bishop h4, h3, sorry, protecting this, and now b5, which I completely missed. And all of a sudden I'm like, wow, can I lose this game? Because I kind of have to take, because if not, the pawn is taken, I cannot take because this one is lost. If I don't take, I have one less pawn and the pressure around the b file might be a bad one, so I have to take. Once more, the pressure is there. Thankfully, I have b4 move. And my opponent cannot really play like this because I will drop back either of the rook, perhaps this one or this one, trying to hit the pawn like this, and then I will go back with the bishop to f1, maybe play b5, so then this passer combined with the bishop and this pawn being weak, maybe I have some winning chances actually, but my opponent took and took, so yeah, I am having a weakness there, I have to care about this move too, and apparently my opponent just simply felt, okay, draw is enough for me, I will play knight f5 and suggest a draw. Obviously I will have to take it because I am, double attacked, so I have to take with the bishop, and if so, how in the world I am going to win this endgame, right? I am the one with more weaknesses. This is the 4 rook endgame, no winning chances. So yeah, pretty anticlimactic game overall, I would say, as a whole, because what I have missed really was this knight d to b5 possibility in the opening phase, and then afterwards I really didn't have much advantage objectively. So I was frustrated with another draw during that day against a lower rated opponent. So yeah, it is what it is. As of now, what can I tell you? Thank you all for watching. leave a like to cheer me up, I guess. And yeah, we'll see each other tomorrow for the rounds number 4 and 5. Bye bye.